Um, Hello. Am I audible? Okay, I think I am audible right now. So I'll just quickly start with a demo of Madara. So basically, there's this workshop is going to be about uh just be divided into two tracks. The first one will be me talking generally about Madara and how you should think about Madara as a framework and whether it's a good idea for you to be deploying an app chain. Um, And the second part of it would be about how you can get started with Madara. And that will be followed by but sharing a bunch of links and other stuff so that you guys can just get started if you make the decision that you have to build an action with Madara. So let me quickly share my screen so that as I think my screen should be visible right now. So I will quickly start a slideshow. Okay, so this is specifically about introducing the Madara stack, and myself, I am Apurv. So I am a contributor and maintainer at Madara, and I'm also the founder of Carnot. Carnot is a developer as a service company that's majorly focused on Madara, which means that we help you launch your Madara app chains so that you can get to market very quickly. We manage all the infrastructure and cloud for you so that you can just focus on your business solution. But like before we talk about that, it's important that we understand what exactly is Madara. And before we understand that, it's even more important to understand how we actually got here. So basically, how all of this actually started was like around 2008, we had the Bitcoin paper, which was released and which showed the world that like decentralized compute actually makes sense. A lot of compute and a lot of power is being going towards centralized hands, and Bitcoin showed that there are ways to just decentralize this so that no one party has all control. And over the years, Bitcoin did like very well, and it was mostly a store of value. So it was mostly to be thought of as money and mostly to be thought of as a payment solution. And it actually did very, very well, which is why people started thinking that, like Bitcoin showed the world that decentralization makes sense. What can we do next? Like decentralization is making sense, but Bitcoin is just a payment solution. So that's when Vitalik and the other people, they came together and they said, you know what, let's do decentralization plus programs. Those programs today are called smart contracts. So Ethereum came and showed the world that why decentralization is important. It's not that you can just do payment solutions. You can do more than that. You can do any Turing complete program, and it will be decentralized, and that's what Ethereum made possible. And after Ethereum, we had like even Ethereum did very well, and because of that, we had very very high fees on Ethereum. We had like slow transactions. The transactions are not getting in because there's very limited block space, and that's when people decided that Ethereum has got PMF. It makes sense. Now, what can we do to use the security of Ethereum, but fix those pain points? Like, how can we make the gas cheaper? How can we make the transactions faster? And that's how we came to the roll-up centric roadmap today. The roller-centric roadmap is essentially these chains like Starknet, Arbitrum, Polygon, Optimism, and so on that are basically scaling the base layer that they're scaling Ethereum for the same problems which I just mentioned. You get faster transactions and you get cheaper gas fees. But the question that you can ask over here is that, is this your end game? Like, is this the end now? Like, we have when these scaling solutions, which are already pretty mature, but obviously there's still a lot to improve from here. But once these general purpose chains are done, is that like the best solution that we can ever make? And the questions and the points to consider over here is that when I talk about general purpose chains, right, like all of these Starknet, Arbitrum, and so on, all these are general purpose chains, which means it's one chain where you can deploy your game, your DeFi app, your perp exchange, and whatever comes to your mind, you can deploy it over here. And the questions that usually come to your mind is that are all the programs going to be written in just one specific virtual machine? Like, is it just going to be Cairo or is it just going to be EVM? Is that the end game? Like, like 10 years down the line, is that what's going to happen? Or like how in Ethereum today, like if you want to add a new feature, it takes like years to add. Like you can just go to the list of EIPs that exist on Ethereum today, and you'll see that adding any new thing is going to take like easily 1 to 2 years. And is this how it's going to happen in the future now? Like, should we accept this that, like if your blockchain needs to be updated, you just have to wait for a lot of time? Because eventually this is going to happen to general purpose chains, right? Like, even if it's an L2, as it becomes more and more mature and as it locks like billions of dollars in value, it will take a lot of time to update it, which means that if there is some really cool feature out there that smart contracts can use, but you need the protocol level to update for that, you'll have to wait, and there's nothing you can do. And finally, it's if you're hacked, it's over. And but basically, what I mean over there is that if you're building a smart contract on a chain, then you are one of the apps that exist among hundreds, if not thousands, of apps on these chains. So if your specific app gets hacked on, like, let's take an example, right? You're using chain X, and chain X has like 1,000 smart contracts on it, and your specific contract got hacked, and all the funds went to the hacker. Now, and we see this happen all the time, right? Like this happened with KyberSwap recently, and it happened with the bridge recently. It happens all the time, basically. And if it gets hacked, the only thing that you can do is you can go to the hacker and say that you can just negotiate with the hacker that return the funds and we let you keep a bounty and so on. What you cannot do is roll back, because like you are only one of the 1,000 smart contracts on that chain. So if you roll back, you have to roll back all the 1,000 smart contracts in every transaction, which is just unacceptable. So is this the end game? And it doesn't look like it, right? Because there's so much more to improve over here. And it doesn't seem like a general purpose chain will be able to solve that. And so we need apps to own the stack. What essentially I mean over here is that you need apps to have their own chain, and you need apps to decide what stack they want to use, just like how it works in the Web2 world today. Like we do not see though in the Web2 world that multiple apps are using the same AWS machine, or they're using the same tech. Like if like 100 apps are using JavaScript, it doesn't mean I have to use JavaScript, right? And maybe Rust makes more sense for me. Maybe Elixir makes more sense for me. So I need that control on what tech stack I can essentially use. And by the way, if there are any questions during this, feel free to ask me. But yeah, you need that control at the tech stack level. And that's when you can only get that control when you essentially own the chain itself, right? For example, there is DYDX, which is its own chain. There's Immutable, which is its own chain. And all these people own the entire tech stack. If they want to use a specific programming language as the smart contract language, they can do so. So in that case, you choose your VM, you choose your decentralization level as well. So like, like you can choose, like, do you want to settle on an L1 and take Ethereum security? You can do that. Maybe you don't have a lot to take from Ethereum, right? Maybe you're just a game and you don't want a lot of funds bridging from Ethereum, and maybe you just want to use a sovereign model where you can have your DA go on like Avail or Celestia or something. If you're new to the space, maybe some of these terms which I'm saying are complicated, but what I'm trying to say is that you choose your like how decentralized you want it to be depending on your use case. Like if you're a government, you might just want to have a permissioned or like a more authorized sort of chain. um, if you are like, yeah, you can choose your VM, and you can also choose a canonical chain. So the third point, the canonical chain, is related to the hack point, which I was mentioning before, which essentially means that if your specific chain gets hacked, then in the case that you own the chain itself, you can choose to reorg, and you can choose to remove the blocks where you essentially got hacked. And something like this did happen. Like, obviously it's a little complicated when you are a layer 2 or a layer 3, but it's doable. And something like this has happened like before with Ethereum itself. Like I think back in 2017 when there was the DAO hack where a lot of the funds in Ethereum got hacked away. Ethereum chose to reorg and build a new chain to ensure that they don't lose the money. And that's when we actually had Ethereum split into Ethereum and Ethereum Classic as we know it today. So yeah, app chains, like what I just described as the concept of app chains, and this is not something new. App chains have been existing for a lot of time now. In fact, if you go to in fact, Starkware is one of the pioneers in the app chain technology in itself. And it started long back, like with the DYDX, I think back in 2019 or something. And Starkware has been pretty much pioneering ZK scaling with app chains before it made Starknet. And today also, if you go to DeFi Llama, I took this screenshot a while ago, but I don't think it would have changed much. But two of the protocols that you see over here are DYDX and Apex, both of which are being powered by StarkX. DYDX also has their own V4 chain now, so it's a mix, I guess. But yeah, like Starknet has been doing Immutable, Sorare, and multiple other chains right now. And all of these are app chains, right? These are not general purpose chains. Like DYDX is just for perps, Immutable is for gaming, and Sorare is for the cards, trading the cards, and it's more also like sort of towards games. So yeah, this it's not a new concept, but the question is, what is Madara, right? I've been like way into the talk already, and I haven't really spoken about Madara itself. So the reason I didn't speak, I was just setting up the pace on why app chains are important, so I can explain why we're building Madara. So now, if app chains make sense to you, the reason why we build Madara is that if every app out there is going to be its own chain, there's going to be a lot of parts of the tech stack which will be common across all the chains. Now, what do I mean by that is, imagine if you're building a backend app, right? Like you're building a backend and using Node.js and Express.js, then what's going to happen is that you'll have a lot of the parts of your stack, which are like a lot of the parts of your backend will be common, like listening to HTTP calls, then making sure the packets are not being dropped and so on. You don't need to write all of this logic yourself. We have a lot of libraries like Express.js, Spring Boot, and Java, and so on that handle this for you. And similarly, when you're building your own chain, you don't need to rewrite the entire logic of like having blocks or creating block headers or hashing your like having hashing functions and so on, right? You can abstract all of that, and for that you need a framework which does it for you, so that you can just focus on your business logic. So in the web 2 world, in a backend, that means you can just focus on writing APIs. In a Madara like framework, that means you can just focus on your smart contracts and your protocol level logic, while we'll take care of the rest for you. We'll take care of about the giving support for the VM, giving support for the RPCs, and so on. So Madara is basically a framework for you to build your own ZK rollups. And it is very, very modular from day one, right? So how do we actually achieve modularity? That goes to Substrate. So basically, like, well, the first thing is like building a blockchain itself is very difficult. Like there are a lot of things that you need to solve. There are a lot of things when you're doing it from scratch. There are like just too many things that you need to consider. And if you want your blockchain launch to be safe, you want to like cut edges wherever possible and reduce ambiguity. Because of this, a lot of the L2 stacks today are actually not very, very modular. Because like a lot of the L2 stacks are basically open source versions of existing L2 chains. And those L2 chains were built when those L2 chains were being built, they had to get to the market fast and in a safe way. So they couldn't support a lot of modularity. But with Madara, we didn't want to do the same thing, and we wanted to be modular, like very, very modular. So we decided to use the Substrate framework, which is basically a framework that has been in production, I think, for 4 or 5 years now. And it was built by for Polkadot by Gavin Wood and the amazing team they have, who were basically co-founders in Ethereum, and then they decided to build Polkadot, where they built Substrate, which is a framework to build blockchains in general. Right? It's not ZK specific blockchains. That's what Madara does. But Substrate is a framework to build any sort of blockchain that you want. And it's been battle tested for years and has a lot of dev tooling. And when we decided that we want to build a framework for ZK rollups, we thought we'll leverage Substrate for that. Simply because it ensures modularity. Like today, there are like more than 150 plus chains that are using Substrate, and they're all different in some way or the other. Like Substrate gives you amazing APIs to change the consensus algorithm if you want to, change the hashing algorithm if you want to, change your block structures, and so on. So that's simply the reason we decided to go ahead with Substrate. So Madara basically uses the Substrate stack to help people launch their chain, like to help people launch their ZK rollups. And how Substrate is actually modular is because of the concept of palettes, like palettes, and there are other things as well to it. But one of the major things is actually palettes. So you can think of these palettes as libraries in the runtime. So your runtime in any blockchain is the consensus critical part. So whatever happens in the runtime of your blockchain is important for like multiple nodes to come to a consensus on. And it pretty much defines the logic of your chain, like what you're going to do in an invoke transaction, what you're going to do in a declare transaction. All that is defined within your runtime. Um, and your runtime itself is composed of multiple palettes. You can think of these palettes like libraries in the Web 2 world. Like I said, you can basically, like, let's suppose you're building a Web 2 app. So you have Express.js for your backend. You have the UUID library to create IDs. You have another library for you to create randomness and so on, right? So all these things together define, plus your code, make your entire backend. So similarly, in a Substrate, you have like a palette for block production, a palette for timestamps, a palette for your virtual machine, and so on, which together define the logics of your runtime. In the case of Madara, we have the palette Starknet. Like we already make use of existing palettes within the substrate framework. But on top of that, we have created our own palette, which is the palette Starknet. Now, the question is, what do you get with the palette Starknet, right? And the answer is that you get the Cairo virtual machine out of the box. So if you're using the Madara if you're using the Madara chain, by default, you will get the Cairo virtual machine support, which means your chain can have Cairo smart contracts. You will get the Starknet RPC, which means that like by default, Madara will support the entire Starknet RPC spec. And as long as you're using a tool that relies only on the RPC, right? For example, you're using a wallet, or you're using Starkly, or you're using some other tool that uses the Starknet RPC, you can just point that Starknet RPC to Madara and it should still work. We will support Stark X. I mean Sharp. Sorry, I mean Sharp for proving. So basically, we will allow you to prove the execution of your contracts within Madara using the Sharp prover, and it's very modular, like I said, right? Like there's an amazing prover called Platinum, which is made by Lambda class, and we likely support that as well. And for DA, once again, we are very modular. You can choose if you want to use Celestia, Whale, Ethereum itself. You can choose where you want to send data. So this is what Madara supports out of the box as of today. Um, Sorry, yeah. So the current state of Madara right now, this slide is actually a little outdated, but yeah, we support the VM, we support all RPC endpoints on version 0.5.1, but we should have 0.6.0 very soon as well. We are compatible with most libraries, pretty much all libraries, I think. If you find a bug in any existing library, please message us on the Telegram group, but we should be compatible with all libraries as long as they're using the RPC. We have a D interface, which means that you can use the existing DLLs like I mentioned, but you can also add any other DLL, right? So near D and eigen D are two things which are already work in progress at Madara. So you can use any DLL like you like. L1, L2 messaging is completed now. So it's not coming soon, it's already completed. Proving is coming soon, which means that we'll soon integrate the shop prover for proving everything that happens in Madara. Audits and optimizations are also coming soon. Finally, if you want to learn more about Madara, feel free to like check out the Madara website at madara.build, where we recently launched a new website. So you can check out exactly what we're doing in Madara, what the purpose of Madara is, and so on. Second, it's 100% open source. So like, like how Madara has a track in the hackathon where you can build on top of Madara. So it's completely open source and you can check out all the code. And if you want to make integrations on it, which is also one of the tracks, like integrating a new DLR or integrating, let's suppose, Gelato or some other service. So it's open source. You can create a PR over here to integrate your tool. But also, if you want to contribute to Madara, feel free to do so. And you'll also get paid via the Only Does platform. Finally, these are our socials. So this is the Madara Telegram where you can ask us any development related questions. The Madara Twitter where you can follow us for any updates. And finally, the Madara GitHub where you can check out more about the code and you can contribute. Now I can quickly maybe just like run through the multiple tracks that we have. The first track is the app chain track. So this is basically means just running an app chain, right? So basically run your Madara node and deploy your app on top of it. And try to build an app that actually makes sense for an app chain, right? So these could be like, let's suppose order book based exchanges, because it's very expensive to run order books on a general purpose chain. So you do it on your own chain. It could be, maybe like a article or a post sort of website, something like Farcaster, or maybe even like Mirror or Medium, where you can like post things. So yeah, you can innovate and decide what makes sense for your specific app and build a Madara app chain. Good ways to get started over there is the Carnot CLI. Like we recently launched a CLI at Carnot that helps you launch your app chain, like your Madara node in just like 2 commands in it and run, and your chain should be running. Uh, but if you're a more of a techie guy and you like building from source, then feel free to go to the Madara repo. Over here, you can go to docs, and you can go to getting started, where you will get a good guide on how you can get started with Madara, like building it up from scratch and using it from there. Finally, once you have a Madara node set up, like I said, all the Starknet tooling should work by default with Madara. So if you're already used to Starknet, feel free to just start interacting it, right? You can use Starknet JS, Starknet RF, your wallets to start interacting with it. And we also wrote this blog called Getting Started with Madara. So do feel to check it out as well. We explain how you can use Starkly, and we also give you some sample scripts to get started with Madara. I'll posting all these links on the Discord as well so that you can get started. So yeah, one of the tracks of the hackathon is building an app chain. So these specific points will help you get started over there. There's another track where you can build integrations for Madara. So building the integrations basically means like like integrating a new DLL. So let me quickly show you, like we already have running PRs right now about how you can integrate a new DLL, or maybe you can actually check one of the merged PRs. So we have a very good interface on we basically have a trait that you need to implement. Yeah, the DA no. That we basically you can check the code of this specific PR on how you can add your own DLL. So that is one type. I'm not saying you have to add a new DLL, but that is one thing you can do. You can add other services, like I said, like Gelato, some other oracles or something with Madara, and that's like an integration. You can also just build tooling around it. So while we already have a lot of tooling for building smart contracts, because like a lot of tooling exists for Starknet to build smart contracts and debug smart contracts, there's not a lot of tooling for building app chains in general, right? This could be essentially something like the Carnot CLI, which helps you launch the Madara and the Explorer in just 1, 2 commands. It could be something that helps you play with your Genesis state specifically on some other things around the tooling side, like which makes it easier for you to build app chains. So these are pretty much the tracks. I hope I'm not missing anything. Maybe I can just confirm really quickly. But yeah, I think that I'm not sure if I have the link right now, but yeah, I think I'm not missing anything specifically. And these are the major tracks that we have for the Madara hackathon. Um, yeah, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask on the Madara Telegram or the Discord. And I'll be sharing the links like which I just shared right now on the Discord as well. Thank you.